Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned to the Dave Williams Podcast. Nah, that'd be funny, right? No, it's the MC Lars Podcast. You know that because this is episode 26. It is Monday, February 25th. March is upon us, and we have a very cool guest this week. We always have great guests. I always start the podcast being like, we have a very interesting guest, but we do. This guest is a little different. You know, like often I interview rappers or like tech creators and stuff. This week's guest is Vinnie Caruana, and he is a punk singer, I guess post-hardcore rock. We'll get into more of that, like the specific genres, but he's different. He's a friend that I met years ago when I Am the Avalanche and I played a college show together. He was first in a band called the Movielife, and then he was in I Am the Avalanche. He's done a lot of other projects. He's done a lot of solo stuff. And the first time I got to really tour with him was Warped Tour 2013. And the first time we like hung out extensively, we were at the Lake of the Ozarks for our day off, which, you know, that resort later became the theme of that famous Netflix show. But this was before that. And we were swimming in the lake and talking and hanging out. And, you know, we got to know each other. And so when I started this podcast, I thought this would be an interesting guest to have because Vinnie and I have always crossed paths kind of. We worked with a lot of the same producers. Mike Sapone in Brooklyn, who did the Laptop EP, and The Graduate produced the early Movielife stuff. And then Vinnie was briefly in a band called Head Automatica, produced by the Rondo Brothers with this guy, Dan the Automator, who did the Deltron album and worked on Gorillaz years ago. And I worked with the Rondo Brothers on Robot Kills, and they produced the whole Digital Gangster LP. So we always kind of crossed paths like ships in the night. So we had a good talk. We talked about the time he decided not to be straight edge anymore. Great interview. Before we get into this, I wanted to mention that in case you wanted to hear more of me talking to people, if this podcast were not enough, I wanted to recommend the Oh No Lit Class podcast with Megan and RJ. On episode 53, they interviewed me about my thoughts on Huck Finn. And I wrote a song. Many of you know Huck Finn's on the Run. So they reached out to me. So I was a guest on their podcast, and they were very funny. Their podcast, each episode, they talk about different versions of the great American novel, and they have their perspective on it. And just, it's great. It's a funny way to learn about literature. So they had me on, and that was tight. And I got thinking about the great American novel, like shortly after I was on that podcast. And I guess there are like 4 books that I would say are contenders for me, for the great American novel. Let's go over them. Huck Finn, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It's a story of racism and friendship and a changing American South. The Great Gatsby, which I feel like reflects the whole Instagram culture of like trying to project something you think society expects you to be, to find love and acceptance, and the shortcomings that come with problems with like putting your image before your identity, but also the mystery and grandeur of Gatsby. Moby Dick is another contender for the great American novel because it's about manifest destiny and mankind's desire to conquer nature and find purpose in action. And finally, a 4th book, which I would say is a very strong contender for the great American novel, is David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest. Now, those of you who have been listening to the podcast for a while know I talk about David Foster Wallace a lot, and I talk about this book. And I'm doing a show in Kentucky in a few weeks, 2 weeks, and I'm interviewing this guy, Greg Carlisle, who wrote a great book on Infinite Jest, breaking it down, all the themes and stuff. Infinite Jest is a great book and looks at freedom and the American dream from another perspective. It's a story of this cartridge that was created by this kind of scientist, inventor, artist guy. This cartridge, which is like a DVD that if you watch, you can't stop watching and it kills you. I think this book is really relevant now because David Foster Wallace predicted a lot of things. Like he predicted FaceTime, he predicted DVDs, he predicted a lot of things that hadn't come about when Infinite Jest was written. And this past week, my wife and I took a trip to Marfa, Texas, which is a beautiful town in West Texas that this dude, Donald Judd, kind of made popular when he moved there and started doing these big installation minimalist pieces. And he created this whole amazing museum. If you're ever out in that part of West Texas, you should check it out. We also got to go down to Mexico through Big Bend Park and to go to Boquillas and hang out in Mexico. I'd never been there, but the reason I talk about Marfa is because being unplugged from my screen and listening to actual radio, it just made me more mindful of my time. Being in a natural place away from the city does that. So yeah, I don't know. I've been very thoughtful these days, thinking about like where we're going, what we're doing, the state of our country, the state of media, the importance of communication and ideas, the importance of culture. And to finish everything off, on the way back, I watched this movie on the plane called The King. by Eugene Jarecki. And it's the story of Elvis mirrored with the rise and fall of the American empire, and how Elvis kind of was this, cultural export that everyone had to appreciate and listen to because America's culture was so dominant post World War II. There are a lot of questions of appropriation and whether, why later in his life he spiraled down, dying at 42, overweight and unhappy. I've been very thoughtful about all these threads between what makes our heroes, what is the purpose of all this, why do we create things, why do we communicate? We're at a border right now, right? And crossing down to Boquillas, listening to the radio, all this stuff about the wall and the border just made me very thoughtful and made me think about the way we understand the world is by meeting each other and meeting halfway. So we don't need to get too political. I've just been thoughtful and thinking about the Huck Finn book and Infinite Jest and the American experience. So those are some thoughts I've had. If you want to hear more of my writing and thoughts about it, check out my Patreon series on Infinite Jest, because it's not just about the book. I'm writing about where we are and what David Foster Wallace means to me. Speaking of Patreon, I want to thank my Patreon supporters. Some of my new ones, Ryan, Andrew, and Tori. Some of my old ones, Alex, Keegan, and Seth. Thank you all very much for your support. If you sign up, of course, you get a shout out. I'm going on tour, so nerdcoretour.com is always the destination spot for those MC Lars tour dates. I'm going to the UK. We're celebrating the 10th anniversary of This Gigantic Robot Kills. Feels like it was just yesterday that I was mastering that record, but I'm going on tour in the UK with Megaran, Cuckoo Kangaroo, and a band from Newcastle called Ruled by Raptors. We're going to be March 30th. We're in Southampton. Then we go to Bristol. Then we go to Bolton, which is up near Manchester. Then Birmingham, Leicester, Lancaster, Leeds, Stockport, which is Manchester, Newcastle, Glasgow, Huddersfield, Nottingham, London. We end on April 13th. So we're basically playing every day. Then I do a Midwest Southern tour with the Nerdcore homies, Frontalot, Megaran, and Schaefer the Dark Lord, playing Fargo, North Dakota, April 30th, which is the first time I've ever been to North Dakota. And after this tour, I will only have one state left to play. That's Delaware. That's freaking cool. We go to Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Chicago, Pontiac, Lakewood, which is basically Cleveland, Rochester, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Nashville, Birmingham, Charlotte, North Carolina, Atlanta, Gainesville, Florida, West Palm Beach, which is kind of near Miami, and then Winter Park, which is basically Orlando, Florida. So 30 shows coming up, doing a lot of the Dewey Decibel songs. We have a single coming out March 15th, the Watchmen single with MC Frontalot, Quelle Chris, Miss Eve, Schaefer the Dark Lord, and of course Megaran. That's the first single from the album. So there'll be more info on that. Those of you on Kickstarter will have already heard it, but we're doing a bunch of videos and singles leading up to the album release. It comes out the first Friday of June. Let's get into this interview with Vinnie Caruana. Great dude. Thank you all for listening. I'm MC Lars. This is the MC Lars Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the MC Lars Podcast. I'm here with Vinnie Caruana. Did I say that right?
You did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we are here in Brooklyn, and Vinnie, he survived the rain and the lightning to come do this interview. For that, I am grateful.
I have wet pants for the listener. I have wet pants. I'm barefoot. This is the first time I've ever been to Lars's apartment.
I feel like you look right at home, or is that just because you're soaked?
It's because I have nothing on my feet. So I've made myself at home, yeah.
And this is also a first. Vinnie is using the camping chair I had by the couch to conduct the interview, and he looks a lot more comfortable than all of my previous guests. So I think you've started a new tradition I'll offer people.
It's definitely better than sitting on the edge of this couch.
Vinnie, I wanted to talk about a memory. This is a Warped Tour memory that sticks with me, and I wonder if you remember it. Okay, Warped Tour 2013, we were with William Beckett and the crew, and we were at the Lake of the Ozarks. It was a day off, and we all bravely swam off the dock across the lake and back. Do you remember this?
I do. That was basically the most we've ever hung out. It was like that one day we forged a friendship and then barely saw each other for 5 years.
And then I ran into you on, I was Warped Tour a few years ago. It was like a day off, and I was randomly in Brooklyn, but I was living here.
Yes.
And I ran into you in Greenpoint.
Yes. Going back to that Lake of the Ozarks day, that was a that was a wild summer. I mean, we were all those guys that we were chilling with that day, like swimming in Lake of the Ozarks, which is a pretty sick place. I mean, I had heard about it. It's interesting, and now they have the show about it, which I watched the first season of. That day was awesome. I just remember getting super stoned and going swimming with you and William, and we were with a bunch of other people. Do you remember who else was there with us? Because there was like 12 people on our bus. I don't know who was hanging.
I think John, my drummer, was with us.
Yes, he was.
And maybe like one of Mac Lethal's, like maybe Patrick, his hype man or something.
Yeah.
And it was
a ragtag bunch.
It was like the random bunch who were like, yo, let's go swimming.
That's the way I felt that whole summer. I was on Warped Tour alone for like a month.
And was that the like first time you'd done Warped Tour as a solo artist?
I did it. I did it on Brian Marquis' acoustic stage, but the band was there. So like I was on a bandwagon with my band, and then we would play our band set, and then I would go play a solo set in like a mellow setting. So it was cool. But this time for that good portion of the summer, I was alone, but I was on a bus with a bunch of DJs, rappers, production people, singer-songwriters. And we had like an epic summer together. It was like lit. It was a totally full bus of people that had never met each other. It was totally like the real world.
And that's when Warped, like those years towards the end, Kevin had some very eclectic acts. Mm-hmm. It kind of distilled to like to its origin at the end, but like those 3 years I did it was very much like DJs and acoustic and rappers, and like usually I'd be on a bus with just other rappers or other DJs, never with singer-songwriters. So
what was your traveling situation on that tour?
We were on a bus. We were supposed to be with Mad Child.
He ended up on our bus.
Yeah, he got delayed coming into the country. Mm-hmm. So I was with basically Cairo Kingdom, they were called, their group.
Okay.
Like a German electronic group, and then all like crew people.
Okay.
So it was definitely like more chill. It wasn't so much craziness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I liked that part of Warped Tour, like getting to know people from different backgrounds, and you always like would see people, say hi to them, but your bus became like your family, right?
Oh God, yeah, you really stuck together, and yeah, it became very cliquey, which was cool. Meaning the whole bus was just like a unit, and all hung out together every day. And we like almost every night when the bus would pull out of the grounds, we'd be like DJing in the front lounge, everybody sitting around dancing, drinking, getting stoned and shit. It was good. It was a really cool summer.
And I think that like there's that, or it can be very antisocial.
Yeah.
And quiet. How many Warped Tours did you do with like all of your projects combined?
I never did a full one. So Drive-Thru Records had a Warped Tour stage where it was all drive-thru acts, and then Glassjaw was on that stage too, just because they were friends with a bunch of us and friends with Drive-Thru and stuff. We did like 3 weeks of that, and then I Am the Avalanche in the early days did like 2 or 3 weeks in a van.
Wow.
Which that was a little rough. We had fun, of course, but that was difficult. Because you got to drive overnight and you're not really getting real sleep, and so I don't know. We were young, so we were able to handle that. But and then Avalanche did another maybe a month, and then I did solo that same tour, and then I must have done a month with Brian on that acoustic stage alone. So is that four? Yeah. Just parts of 4.
Yeah.
So not like crazy amounts where I know everybody that works for Warped Tour, and you know what I mean? When like the people that go every other summer for the entire thing probably know everybody, all the crew people, like
by name, first name.
Yeah. I just knew whoever we were hanging with, and I don't know. Made some new friends for sure though.
Another thing you and I have in common is we've both worked with the amazingly talented Mike Sapone.
Yes.
Tell us about the Red Demo and how you met Mike and everything with the Movielife, if I'm getting that correctly.
It's totally, yeah. So Mike Sapone, I believe that Movielife is the gap between Mike Sapone and the Long Island bands that he ended up working with. He might disagree. I don't remember, but I remember the Movielife being kind of someone that our old drummer Evan had found Sapone, like a guy to record our demo, because the demo, that was like a release. Your demo, you get it, and then you sell it at shows on the merch table,
Yeah.
So I think he just found Sapone through, I have no idea. And we went and recorded. It was my first time recording. And yeah, it ended up being pretty, important, as far as we made another tape after that. And then we ended up putting records out and signing to labels, and then becoming a band that, still tours. So the Red demo is interesting. It's like it's red. The outside is red, and it has a barcode on it. The barcode was part of the artwork. That barcode was not like registered to any sort of product or anything like that. And there's a funny story with that. We ended up playing at this super PC, super indie record store with Botch and Jesuit, and on our first tour, I think. And they almost didn't let us play because like our demo looked like it was like corporate or something, and it had a barcode on it something. That's like a really vague memory that just popped up that I forgot about. But yeah, Mike Sapone was like definitely like my first real recording experience at his house.
What year do you think?
That was in, we started being a band in 97. We may or may not have done the demo in late 97 or early 2000. So early 98.
Wow. So 20 years ago.
Yeah. So we started in September of 97. So yeah, I don't think maybe we recorded like a few months later. So yeah, maybe late 97.
I met Mike because my first manager, Tom Gates, worked with Brand New.
Yeah.
And he found, I was on tour in the UK, like a label out there had put out a CD I did in my dorm. But Mike, he played it for Mike, and Mike was like, this kid is cool. I want to work with him. And like, similar thing. I'd never been in the studio. This was 2003. So 5 years after you met him.
Right.
And I remember him talking about you guys. And like, I was asking him about the scene because, I'm from California and stuff. But I started to realize after working with him, people like Mike are so rare.
Yeah, he's a really rare dude.
To have him as like a first production experience is like such a because the results, tell me if you agree with this, the results I found were so good, and it was so fun, and he was so quick and a great collaborator.
Yeah. It's been a really long time since we collaborated. It's hard for me to even remember that session that much, but you caught Mike. You caught Mike like right before he released the big Brand New record, right?
Yeah.
So he had been honing his craft for another 5 or 6 years. So we had him in his very early days, and I think you had him when he had started to perfect his rock and roll sound,
And he did a Public Enemy remix. That's what
I remember that being on the wall, right? Yeah. And I was like, what release is this? Oh yeah, it was all remixes, right?
Yeah, he submitted a remix for their compilation album.
And it was a big deal that it got picked up, and he was really proud of it. And I am a really big Public Enemy fan.
You guys had taken a break for a minute, or?
Yeah, like Movielife's kind of like a it's not like hey, we've been a band since 97. We broke up in 2003, right when you were kind of getting started with your recording career. And then we stayed broken up until like 2014 or something.
Oh, wow.
We played like 1 or 2 reunion shows in those 10 years or whatever. And then we got back together and started playing shows again. Yeah, maybe 3 years ago.
And you guys had just missed playing with each other, or?
Shit, it's like, it's anyone listening who's been in a band or even in a relationship, like some days you even if it wasn't a good idea, or if you didn't get along, or if it just didn't work, the chemistry, personality wise, even if that you kind of like somehow forget about all that because you're just romantic about an era of your life and a really important era of your life. And so no, it's more of that where it's always on the back of your mind. And then one guy, it starts to bubble up. One guy's like, hey, we should like play shows, you know? Like, yeah, you know, we should. And then the next thing you know, we're like in Belgium and
Yeah.
so like that's what's going on with us. You know, the way it's been going with Movielife lately is it's Brandon, Riley, and myself are the only like guys from, you know, we're the songwriting and core band force, and we have some friends that play with us, and it's really fun. It's really, really fun.
That's cool. And you have, I mean, also so many new people have discovered you. I bet that's dope, right? They missed you.
We just did a support tour for the first time since like 2002, where we supported Newfound Glory, and Bayside was also on the tour, and it was like really trippy. Like we definitely made new fans, and I don't remember doing like Movielife hadn't made new fans since, I don't know, we toured with Good Charlotte and MXPX in 2002 or something.
Yeah.
I think was the last like support tour we ever did. So it was amazing to like for people to dig the new stuff and figure out that I kind of gave them like a 1 minute little spiel of like, you know, for the people that don't know who we are, this is our little short little story. Like, you know, I don't know how many years, 17 years before, we were touring with Newfound Glory when a lot of them maybe weren't, you know, into the scene or anything. So like, yeah, I mean, we had our diehard, like old school fans, people that were like, didn't know we were back together, that remember us from the drive-through days because of the association with Newfound Glory. And then, yeah, a bunch of new people. So we just did like a 6-week tour.
Huge theaters, I bet, or arenas,
It was
maybe?
big. It wasn't arenas, but it was like, I would say anywhere from like 800 to New Jersey was like 4,000 or something.
Oh my God.
So I'd say maybe 2,000 would be like your normal, which is a lot of, I mean, it's a lot of people.
Something that I learned in all my trips coming to New York was that Long Island has always been the ground zero for this post-hardcore mashup with melodic music. And I'm sure you've spoken about this at length in mad interviews, but like, why do you think more than any other part of the country, so many big bands with that kind of attitude and that melody came from that place in such a short period?
I assume we're talking about Taking Back Sunday, Brand New, Movielife, Glassjaw, Crime in Stereo, like that. We were all going to shows. You're given like any given Long Island hardcore show, and that's a very broad term. Long Island hardcore was just the scene, right? But not all the bands were hardcore, but they all played together. There was some tough guy stuff and like some like you said, more melodic punk or hardcore kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Post-hardcore, everything.
Yeah.
And it was mainly because of where we were all at. So we all grew up on Long Island, going with like a total scene already happening. The scene that was going on when we were growing up before we all started bands was like, it's like a scene that everyone around the world that loves what we all did, they don't even acknowledge it, that they didn't even know that it existed. And now Spotify, records are starting to pop up.
Yeah.
And of records that we were all influenced by and bands that we would go and see every weekend. So being on Long Island, having an already like just flourishing scene of amazing local bands like Silent Majority, Mind Over Matter, Neglect, stuff like Vision of Disorder, like really sick, amazing bands, crazy shows, tons of kids.
Yeah.
Like every weekend there'd be 100 more people on Long Island into hardcore or punk, you know what I mean? It was just exploding. And we had New York City. So that was obviously happening in New York City. Those bands would come to Long Island. The Long Island bands would play with the city bands. And now our influences are now all this melodic stuff from Long Island, all this way ahead of its time post-hardcore stuff. You know, Walter's in the city doing Quicksand, and we're all like, "Ooh, Quicksand is where it's at." Oh, and then like when bands started coming to New York, like when we started going to see them in the city, or when they started coming to play Long Island more, then that started influencing a lot too. I mean, those bands started getting influenced by, like, I remember Avail coming, Fugazi coming to like our local club, you know, Refused, and Texas Is the Reason, I remember, made a huge splash on Long Island. Everybody was like, Texas Is the Reason. Everybody was just talking about Texas Is the Reason and Promise Ring and stuff like that.
How about Rites of Spring, or is that kind of older?
The older dudes would always like be like, you guys need to listen to this.
Yeah.
Because we were maybe listening to Minor Threat because that's like your entry level hardcore. Like you gotta like Minor Threat. And then maybe some of us skipped over Rites of Spring and some of the other DC stuff because we were just, I don't know, we were like probably getting into Lifetime and stuff like that, you know?
And you didn't have Spotify, which is the living history. It's all on there now.
We didn't have anything like this. People bought records.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation about it the other day with a friend of mine. He goes, do you know how many records Movielife sold? I'm like, no. He's like, do you remember like what the first week was of like your big record? I'm like, no. He's like, I do. You want to know? And when he told me the number, I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Are we rock star? Like, and I remember like we would play a show, that Good Charlotte, MXPX, Newfound Glory arena tour. That's the last support tour we did before this last one. I mean, we would sell like 200 records at a show.
Yeah, right.
So it's like there's like a good chance if you threw a dart into a crowd, some people got into you in the early hardcore days, but a lot of people got into you on tours like that, where like, you know, I mean, how often is it that you sell that many records at the merch table? You know what I mean? So things are different now. People like to buy vinyl, which is cool, which is helpful for both of us, I'm sure. But it's like, yeah, I mean, everybody was buying music, and the sharing of music was like barely happening. Like Napster had just kind of started when, I guess maybe towards the end of Movielife, I remember like my parents getting a computer and me going on Napster and like just downloading a lot of viruses to my parents' computer.
That was like the jump off point where everyone started to discover music, but you didn't really know the story about it. Like if someone sent you an MP3, you might know the band, but you wouldn't know much about them versus going to see a show with your friends and like talking to the band and like all the cultural history and stuff. Like it kind of became this desiccated, removed entity, which is good and bad, I guess.
You are going into it blind and becoming a pure fan, regardless of like what they look like or what they're trying to represent aesthetically. But yeah, it's good to know like what record that song is on and what that album artwork is. And I mean, yeah, you talk about shows. I actually posted something on my Instagram this morning, which is just this flyer that Revelation Records tagged me in from the year 2000. And then I started looking at a bunch of other old flyers. And on the flyer, it would list the bands. Mm-hmm. And underneath each band, it would say, so-and-so records from Long Island, New York. And at least you have this little head start of like, okay, so this is what's going on. These guys, we would always, on Long Island, we would always like, oh, wow, that band. Like if it was a band that we knew, we would definitely check them out. If it was a band that we didn't know, and it was like from California, be like, well, we should watch these guys. We got to like show these guys that Long Island's like, you know, a place that everyone should come, you know? So that was always a thing. Like Long Island was Long Island was always the favorite spot of touring bands because they always knew they were going to get a great show and a crazy response. And that's how we started getting more shows because people would just go to New York City. They didn't know that they were supposed to go to Long Island, but Long Island became something people would always stop in. Hardcore bands especially knew what was up and that Long Island would take care of them.
Were you ever into Adam and His Package?
I never really listened as like, you know, I never turned the music on and listened, but we'd play shows together every once in a while way back in the day.
I liked how he had a sense of humor, but I liked his website because he would write a touring blog.
Right.
And as a kid, I was like, this is so cool. This guy gets to like play all these scenes, meet all these people. And that was really cool to me. And that he was a big influence on me. And when I started, he gave me like the secret list of like DIY promoters to hit
that's
up.
huge.
So that was cool.
That's awesome.
I was just like the annoying fan who would email him, and he was nice to me. And I was like, this is like something that the bands I grew up watching on MTV, they didn't have that same kind of culture, you know?
Yeah, and you instantly fall in love with that, right?
Like that. He was so nice to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, talk to me.
And it was like the internet became this thing that regionally the space of local DIY community like kind of expanded. And I wonder, what do you think it's like now in Long Island? Does some sort of threads of that still exist?
Long Island is still going. I mean, there's a bunch of bands coming up on Long Island. The scene is never like, I guess it's been a while since, I think I would say, generally speaking, hardcore is coming up on Long Island, or I should say it never stopped. It's been a long time since a big melodic, band of this broad genre like started headlining massive places. But as far as hardcore goes, I mean, some of the world's most popular hardcore bands are from Long Island. I mean, Incendiary is, I watched the video of them play at This Is Hardcore Fest, and I swear I've never seen anything like it. I mean, one would think that they're the biggest hardcore band in the world. The reason I say that is because I don't think there's a hardcore kid out there that likes real hardcore that doesn't like Incendiary, because what's not to like? Backtrack is another band that everyone across the world, like you can talk to kids in Korea and they'll be like, yeah, Backtrack. When I was over, we're in Japan and Korea, and ended up, there was a good amount of hardcore kids coming to our shows in Japan, which is really interesting. It was the first time Movielife had ever gone over, and I was noticing that I think we had a lot of fans from like early Revelation days. It was a really weird mix of fans. It was brand new fans that only know the new record because a great label in Japan called Ice Girls put it out, and they got into the new record. And then there was a bunch of people where we're like, all right, let's add more Revelation Records ones, because there's a lot of hardcore nerdy people in Japan, just like there are all around the world, that are like, oh, they were on Revelation, I'm going to check it out. You know what I mean? It's one of those. That's
kind of like a cool throwback thing where like the label, seeing your band's name on a flyer, right? The label name.
The label would mean so much. Signing to Revelation got us a little bit of this hardcore cred where we were never a hardcore band. But we toured with hardcore bands and did hardcore shows and would go over better some nights and worse other nights. But like, those are the channels that we always went through, because that's what we knew. We were just hardcore kids. We weren't like, where's the melodic punk promoter? We were like, hardcore scene, this is all we know,
Were you part of Head Automatica?
I was. For that's another connection that we share, the Rondo Brothers.
Yeah, right. I just emailed Jim before you came in.
Cool. Well, the Rondo Brothers are part of that story. When Movielife broke up, Daryl had already recorded the first Head Automatica record, and he's like, "What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, I'm gonna work." Tim from Vision of Disorder had a construction company. It was pretty depressing. Like, I think we played our last show on a Saturday, and then on Monday I had my first day at like a construction site in like Clinton Hill, and Daryl's like, well, what's your plan? I'm like, he's like, I told him I was writing music, which was becoming I Am the Avalanche. I was just writing songs. And he's like, what do you think about playing at Head Automatica? Because they didn't really put together a band completely. And so I wanted to get back. I didn't want to do what I was doing, and Head Automatica it was really cool. It brought me out of like the dumps. So basically, he had the record done. They had to mix it, and then they ended up going back and recording more music for it and stuff. I don't think "Beating Heart Baby" is just their huge song. I don't even think that was on the record, and then they went and recorded it later. If my memory serves me correctly. Anyway, being in Head Automatica was really fun for me because I love San Francisco, and Brandon from Rondo Brothers and Jim from Rondo Brothers and Dan the Automator were half of the group.
Yeah.
So I played 2 shows. The other half of the group was me, Larry, who's the drummer of Glassjaw, Josh, who's the bass player of American Nightmare, and Daryl. So I was playing second guitar, and it was really cool. I went to San Francisco. We stayed in Brandon's house. Like multiple, we had different experiences. We stayed in his living room one time. We kept going back and forth to San Francisco to work on stuff, to do mixing, to put the band together, to rehearse for shows. So we basically just started hanging out in Brandon's living room. He was really amazing. Like, I haven't hung out with him in years and years, but he was
in the Haight, right? In Haight-Ashbury?
He was like on the top of Folsom over there.
Okay.
There's like this green kind of grassy park above him. Just remember him being at the top of a hill near Folsom off of, I don't remember. And it was a really transformative time for me. So we were out there having fun. The second time we flew out there to do whatever project we needed to complete, on the way out, me and Daryl flying out. I've told this story once before on a podcast because it was like a question of when I stopped being straight edge. So I stopped being straight edge in Brandon's living room. I was straight edge from age 12 to 23 or something. On the plane, I go, Daryl, me and Daryl both got straight edge tattoos together when we were 18. I was like, I'm not straight edge anymore. And part of that actually had to do with Mike Patton, and this was also in San Francisco. Dan had done Lovage with Mike Patton.
Right.
And Mike Patton and Rozelle were doing shows together. Did you ever see that?
I remember seeing it on like YouTube, where Razel's beatboxing and he's doing like crazy.
He's just making all types of like singing and making voices, like making noise, and it's trippy. But we went and saw them at the Great American Music Hall while we were staying out there with Brandon.
Yeah.
And Mike Patton was backstage, and we went backstage. And instead of like shaking our hands, he just goes, "Hold on a second, hold on," waving his hands, like being this host, like this really cool host of. He just pours us shots of Hennessy, I think it was, and he's just like, "Why don't we cheers instead of let's get on the level?" And me and Daryl were both like, "We don't drink," and he looked shocked, like, "What do you mean you don't drink?" Like, not like. We were obviously young kids. Probably it's not like that we were like recovering alcoholics. He just meant like, he's like, "Oh, so you're hardcore kids that don't drink. You're straight edge." We're like, "Yeah." So ever since that moment, I was like, "That's stupid." Like, I even if like I didn't, being straight edge is something I decided when I was a child.
Yeah.
So it just started meaning something different. I was just a guy who didn't drink. I wasn't, affiliating myself with the straight edge anything. And I was like, why can't I have a drink with Mike Patton? It's not like, my life's gonna fucking unravel, or I just started wondering why I didn't have a drink with one of my heroes. And it was because it was my instinct to say that, because it's been that way for so long, and the straight edge police was going to come and get me, and people would be like, "Oh, he's not straight edge anymore." You know what I mean? Like, I was adhering to like this like high school mentality in this like little instant where I had to make a split decision of, do I drink? I don't drink. So on our way back to San Francisco, the next time, I told Daryl, I'm like, I'm not straight edge anymore. He's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, as soon as we get to Brandon's, I'm going to ask him for some weed, and I'm going to break it up, and I'm going to roll a joint, and I'm going to light it, and I'm going to smoke it. And he's just like, holy shit. He blew his mind, because we were best buds and totally straight edge for a long time. And so I light the joint on Brandon's couch. Within like a minute, Daryl's like, "Pass it to me." He goes, "Fuck it, I guess I'm not straight edge either." And we smoke smoked an entire joint. So two dudes that haven't been stoned since we were like young, like 11, 12 years old,
Right.
are smoking an entire joint
Of San Francisco, but
of Humboldt County. Yeah.
right.
We lost our fucking minds.
I'm sure you did.
And Brandon's upstairs,
Yeah.
and we're like calling his phone and shit, being like, what do we do now? We were starving, but we couldn't get off the couch. We couldn't get,
He's probably cooking like delicious food upstairs.
There was no way we were going to the deli down the street or whatever.
Right.
We were like, so what do we do? We're starving and we're completely tripping on weed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even now, as like I've smoked weed for a while. I still only take like one hit of like a pen or something, and I'm good.
Right.
So yeah, we went on a totally fucking wasted on weed.
You jumped right off the building.
Never like looked back. But yeah, and so I only played 2 shows with Head Automatica. One show was at Spaceland in LA, which was that whole group that I mentioned. Dan the Automator was next to me on stage with turntables for at least one of those shows. So the second show we played at Sundance Film Festival at like some magazine party, and then I quit and I was out of the band.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you
To
were
pursue I Am the Avalanche.
So, but like, it's interesting how you and I have this in common. Like getting our start in with Mike Sapone. I feel like my career had the second bump when I linked with the Rondo Brothers.
Yes.
And then learning that I could work with different producers and do other projects and like try different styles and like, so can we talk about how I Am the Avalanche kind of came out of that experience? Or
honestly, like I want to add one more thing to those days. The Rondos were making their Hawaiian record.
Oh, right.
I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
And I remember Brandon coming into the living room. Me and Daryl were sleeping.
Uh-huh.
Comes into the living room with a whipped cream cracker that he had loaded with nitrous tanks.
Okay, right.
And he's just going, what's up? We're like, what's up? And he's just like, you guys are going to pay your rent today. We're like, what do you mean? He's like, you guys are going to record on some songs for our record. And that's how you're going to pay me for letting us basically just, I mean, shit, man. I love having house guests, but if they came for a month at a time, I'd be like, this is fucking insane.
Oh, you were there a whole month?
We would be there for long periods of time.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a month at a time, but certainly a lot of chunks of weeks.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. So me and Daryl have 2 songs together on their first record. And then I ended up recording a song for their second record too that I actually really like. I listened to it recently and it's cool. But we can, I don't know. That's a whole other conversation.
That's cool. I linked with them because Miles, this guy who managed the matches, had heard Head Automatica or knew about them through Head Automatica, and they had submitted to do like some matches demos.
Okay.
So we did the matches, and I did a collaboration at Brandon's place, the same place you probably were.
Yep.
And that's the first time I met them. But it was so fast the way it all came together, and it was so fun because like California producers are much more laid back. I don't know. Would you agree?
I mean, those guys are crazy laid back, but super talented and bringing a lot to the table. That room, I think we're talking about the same room.
Yeah.
There's just instruments everywhere.
From around the world.
Exactly. So we were watching them make that Hawaiian record. I wish I could tell you what the hell it's called. So I'm the Avalanche. Basically, I wrote a bunch of songs on Long Island and wanted to fuck around. And Daryl had to fly to San Francisco. He had to fly back to New York a few times while we were there. So the band was just there. So I grabbed 2 really sick, basically a really sick rhythm section, which was Josh from American Nightmare and Larry Gorman from Glassjaw. And The first time I ever heard what became I'm the Avalanche songs was me teaching it to them so that I could hear it, you know? And so when we weren't doing Head Automatica, if Daryl was going home to do whatever, we would be basically just like jamming on I'm the Avalanche tunes. And like, so the first time I ever heard the songs kind of like they were in my head was jamming at Brandon's place when we were kind of off the clock.
So, and you knew that this is stuff that like wouldn't be Head Automatica songs because it was something
definitely
else.
Not. And they had a record already recorded. This was totally Daryl's baby, you know. So yeah, this was I knew I wanted to go and start another band. I knew I had a lot to say. There was a lot going on in my life that you know, I needed to not be just a guitar player in Daryl's band. I needed to like see another thing through. And so I did.
I Am the Avalanche. What label put that out?
So
the first stuff.
I was still on Drive-Thru
Okay.
from my previous contract, and they still had an option, which they exercised. So the first Avalanche record came out on Drive-Thru in like its dying days. Like it was like its last gasp. There wasn't a whole lot happened after that. Not a whole lot of records got released after that. And then we didn't release a record for 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And were you writing or touring or working on other stuff?
We toured a lot. We said yes to almost every tour. We toured for like 3 years. I mean, we just never stopped. But I'd say we toured for 3 years on that record just because we were having fun and we were young. We were all in our early 20s, like having a blast, playing some really good tours, playing some really bad tours. And becoming like best friends. I mean,
yeah,
all the guys in I Am the Avalanche, I had met everybody, but they had not met each other. A lot of guys that I pulled from other bands that we had toured with in the past, and guys that didn't have a home and, you know, a musical home, and I knew that they were talented and that they were good dudes and fun to hang with. So yeah, they all met at like our first practice, and then like literally we're all like all of us are like brothers. It's really cool. It's a very special band dynamic we have in I Am the Avalanche. It's pretty unique. The only thing that's regretful is that we can't play as much as we'd like to because everyone just has like other jobs and careers and stuff. But when we play, it's really special, and it's always we play like a lot of songs and like make it count, and because we know that it's going to be a while before we play again.
And it's kind of like, maybe does it feel like the whole project was this spontaneous gift, and it's had so much life, right? Like, do you feel like you have that appreciation for it existing in the first place? Maybe?
I do. I'm shocked that we still play, and then I'm shocked that I don't know. The thing with I Am the Avalanche has been this strange and slow trajectory where we put out a record, some people dug it. We didn't put out another for 6 years. The record after that sounded nothing like the first record, but people liked it. And our fan base and the amount of people that come to shows now compared to then, it's just only grown. It's this really strange world that we live in, where most of the people that like our band are they understand that when we play, that it probably won't happen again for a while. Not that it's never going to happen, but we can't promise that it's going to anytime soon. So people travel for the shows, and we basically play in the Northeast too, which is just easier for us to pull off, and people got to be at work on Monday. You know what I mean? Did
you find you had like fans of the Movielife? They were like, oh, this is Vinny's new project. Or was it when you zero?
It wasn't starting from zero. We had some people that were interested in what I was going to do next. I'd say I lost a lot of people. A lot of people just went, okay, I'm going to go on with my life. Movielife's over. I'm going to go and listen to, you know, whatever new was going on. But some people like were like, cool, Vinny's got a new band. And then we put out our record, and then that was the polarizing moment. Like that kind of split the sect even more. There's people, because it sounded way different than Movielife. So certain people were like, nah, this isn't my thing. And certain people were growing at the exact same rate that I was growing as a songwriter. And their musical taste was growing, and they were like, fuck yeah. So, and most of those people are still come to shows. I mean, a lot of the people that come to see us are over 30 for sure, you know?
And that's the cool thing, that being able to experiment, start a new band, you've been able to like grow. It wasn't like a label telling you, an A&R being like, you have to do high school breakup songs exclusively, or
yeah. Oh man, this band. There was a moment that I was taking meetings like with major labels for I Am the Avalanche because, actually, you know Tony Isabella?
Yeah.
Another Ron. There's a lot of these connections.
Yeah.
Tony was like, I have a friend that might like your thing. Like, we should go and meet him. And then there was a moment where I was like, am I signing to a major label? Like, what's going on here? And then Drive Through, of course, was just like, no, we want to put it out. So then that was the end of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, shit. If I would have signed to a major, who knows, like, exactly, man. They may have, like, that record may have never come out. Like, they could have just shelved it and be like, oh, we're releasing the new Green Day. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or maybe I'd be some sort of, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think there's any hit songs on the first Avalanche record. It's all pretty stony, and I do love it. But I always say I regret the tempos of the songs on the new on the first I'm the Avalanche record.
Do you feel like they're too fast or too slow?
They're too slow. And it's pretty vibey as a listener, but like we play it way faster live, and all of our fans know that too. Like they overlook that. They're used to hearing it because they see us so many times, but listening to the record feels like it's in slow motion.
Kind of like the Misfits, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that fast or no?
No, like, I mean, shit, it's a vast difference, the speed that we play live. And we still feel like the songs flow and there's a good pocket to it, and that's all that matters. But we didn't know who we were. We didn't play enough shows to know how fast the songs were. We kind of got in the studio pretty quick. But yeah, still proud of it.
We played a college show together in like 2008 or 7.
Yes, we did.
And was it with Plain White Tees?
Yeah, at Rutgers in Camden.
And that's where I first met you, but I'd known about you through Mike. But that's where I think we played first, you guys were second, and then Plain White Tees.
Yes.
And did you do like a lot of like random college shows during that time, or was that like an anomaly?
We did a lot of random college shows. We would always be interested in, like, you know, colleges. I guess they still do now, but I don't really play a lot of colleges these days because our fan base is not college kids. Colleges pay a bunch of money. So what we would do is they pay bands, like small to mid-level bands, way more than they get paid, as we both know. I'm just talking to the listener.
Right.
So when you're wondering why that band is playing that random college in that town over from you, and like, what the hell are you guys doing here? It's because the band is taking advantage of an arts budget that a college has set aside to pay entertainers to entertain their students. And a lot of times younger hardcore bands and punk bands and people that don't have thousands of fans would take that money and like pay for gas for an entire tour.
Sure. Yeah.
Or like, you know, buy a trailer or the things that you need. So yeah, we ended up playing in Rutgers with you. I remember getting your book and a record.
Book?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. And it was like a cool shirt too. And Plain White Tees, yeah, they had their hit single, and they were headline. That was a weird show. College shows are weird.
And I remember during Hey There Delilah, there was a mosh pit.
Isn't there no drums in that song?
The guy was just sitting. The drummer was doing like accents on the yeah. And so people started getting rowdy, and it was like that was like a very MySpacey moment.
Oh God, yeah, that was an awkward time. We discussed that as I Am the Avalanche. Like, we decided to be a band in a really weird time. I mean, ending like everyone's putting on makeup and playing like this like pseudo rock metal
and sampling beats
stuff.
Yeah.
And where the hell did I Am the Avalanche belong in all of that? Nowhere. I would say that that first Avalanche record would have been better served like getting released 10 years later, which is a lot of those bad tours. Like we would say yes to tours because there'd be people to play in front of, but like we were like this melodic post-punky, I don't know what the hell we were, but we were playing with like, I don't know who was around back then.
Did you ever play with
scary kids scaring kids? Shit like
Broken
that.
Side? That was after. Yeah,
I think that was after. Yeah.
Well, it's just very interesting because like sometimes being ahead of your time can serve you well later. You know what I'm saying? Like now it just seems like you guys have this reputation, and you as this artist, like bands want to sound like that era now. It's a golden era.
Yeah, and I will say the Avalanche records have stood the test of time and are still records that people get down with, which is, you know, that we just know that because people come to shows and they sing along and we know what songs they like. And I mean, if we can get our act together, we'd like to do album shows, like play the first and second albums, but that would be so tough for us to pull off. We'd really have to rehearse a lot. And like 2 of our members don't live in New York anymore, don't live in the city anymore. And like, so anyway, we made good records that I feel like, we didn't conform to that genre. Could you imagine like what those would sound like if we were trying to be something? I think a lot of people were trying to be My Chemical Romance. Like everyone started wearing makeup and like not everybody was good at putting on makeup. So like certain guys look like fucking ridiculous. The same way that people like looked like when you look back at the hair metal scene, like how certain bands looked really cool with their makeup and they had like the right look, and certain bands looked really bizarre. Like certain members just don't look right with makeup, and you know, like
that whole Sgt. Pepper's like outfit style, like the suits or like army suits. The Pieced Out song about the Hillsborough disaster. I was doing some research, and like that has always been an interesting like moment that people in America aren't so aware of. Right. Can we talk about that song? Do you mind?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah.
So I'm a supporter of Liverpool Football Club. And I go into England and watch them play, and I buy all the jerseys, and I, you know, watch them. Actually, they're kicking off in like 45 minutes.
Okay.
For a huge game this afternoon, which is why I told you my time constraint. I'm like, I kind of need to be done by a certain time. Anyhow, so there was a crazy, you know, this was long before I was a Liverpool supporter, but a story that was intriguing and depressing and sad, and that, you know, nonetheless. So long story short, a lot of Liverpool supporters went to Hillsborough, which is a stadium in Sheffield, I think, and they didn't come home. A lot of people died at the game. A lot of people were crushed to death in the stands. So obviously that's just a tip of the iceberg of what happened. And it's crazy. A lot of people that grew up in Liverpool have way better, you know, they could tell you the real story of how it all went down. I'm just a kid from New York who went back and researched things about his football club that, you know, he may not have known. So there's, for anybody that wants to watch, you have to brace yourself because it is extremely fucked up and depressing documentary, but at the same time, you know, probably a must see. 30 for 30 did a documentary on it. I think it's just called Hillsborough. Anyway, so the way that the Sun, the tabloid paper in England, covered it is like they like shamed a lot of the victims. And made up stories and blamed these people who had lost their lives, and made up all these salacious stories about how shit really went down. And still to this day, the families of the deceased and like the Liverpool organizations that are behind this, basically that are after justice for, you know, for those family members that passed away, to basically, you know, have people brought to justice, police chiefs and things like that are still out there that haven't been, you know, punished for changing stories, not telling the truth, false police reports, all this shit. It's basically a cover up on what really happened and whose fault it actually was. And so that song is in a response to just reading about it and just being disgusted on like the way that it's really fantastic, the way the Sun handled it. It's really fucking awesome. That paper, which is like the paper, it's a tabloid like piece of shit paper, but people buy it in England.
Right.
They're used to that shit.
Right.
It's completely banned from the whole city of Liverpool. And Sun reporters who, like, you know, the back pages are all sports. Sun reporters can't come there and cover the games. And there's another Liverpool team called Everton who are like rivals of Liverpool who also don't allow the Sun to enter their grounds. It's pretty cool. You walk through Liverpool, next time you're over there, you can look in the shop windows and there's stickers where it's like that say that the Sun is banned in their shop, like look somewhere else, that kind of thing. It's pretty sick.
That's interesting. And that's what your last line, you say, boycott the Sun.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's interesting because then obviously there was a rivalry that became this reinterpretation of the truth. And that now, I guess, with people's testimonies, that's coming out more and more.
Yeah, the justice is continuing to come, but they still have hurdles. You know, they're still... I'd have to look back on it right now and see just how, you know, they've made a lot of breakthroughs, but these families it's been their lifelong quest to clear the names.
My ex-partner's dad was at Hillsborough.
Okay.
And he would talk about how he got out just in time,
right.
But how it was just like it's something that with the passion and love of sports, it's like such a, if you haven't been to the UK or understand how much they love football, like how that perfect storm could create such a tragedy. And it's and you don't see it happen these days because of things like that, or like they change the way. I mean, they don't have standing room now, and it's all you have. I mean, when I go there, you know, you sit. You know, my first time there, I realized, like, I was told repeatedly, like, to sit down because I was like, oh, okay, we have to all sit. Right.
But if the ball comes and it's, you know, if you're getting into scoring, you know, territory, everyone kind of gets out of their seats and stands. But like, yeah, actually, yeah, I noticed that too. I mean, English football has had like a history of hooliganism and things like that. So that was the other thing I noticed the first time I went there. It's like you have to sit, and there's nobody saying ice cold Budweiser, ice cold. You can't drink while you're watching the game.
Oh, really?
You have to have your drinks before or at halftime. You don't like walk back in. You don't like walk back with your beers and like sit down and drink it.
That's very different, isn't it?
Yeah, just to keep a little bit of a, you know. The days of like the 80s, like hooligans and all that shit is English Premier League is definitely a more family friendly environment these days.
Well, I think that is like thank you for sharing that history, even though it's like a sad song.
And I feel I shouldn't even be the one to speak on it, but that was just I wrote a 2-3 minute song about, wow, you pieces of shit. That's how you handled this situation. You know what I mean? But yeah, anyone listening should go back and read about it and definitely watch the documentary. It's something humans should know.
Let's talk briefly about how you get this. We'll end with this, but when you started making solo music, like what was the process there, and what inspired you to go that direction?
I started playing solo shows because that's a thing that you do when you have to do lots of things to make a living playing music. You can't just get home from I Am the Avalanche tour. You got to go back with yourself, and you got to make sure that, you know, that you're busy. And so I played solo shows for like a year without like even writing a song. And then I was like, wait a second, I should write some solo material. And so I did. And I released an EP called City by the Sea that I recorded at this awesome studio that a friend of mine owns. It's in his garage, in his house in the mountains in California. It's called Bright Mountain. And I got Roger from No Motive. These are all friends of mine, but Roger from No Motive, Steve Choi from the RX Bandits to produce it and play some stuff on it, like some instrumentation. And it's called City by the Sea. And I still love it. Like, I love playing it. I got some solo shows coming up soon where I'm going to be playing a bunch of it. And I just kept at it. And like, you know, when you're done with that and you go back and tour with Avalanche, and then things just go in a cycle and it's time for a record again. And I made another full length. I made my first full length called Survivor's Guilt. That I toured on for like a year, that I'm really fond of. I feel quite a connection to the solo stuff. It's all very personal. And I'm writing a new one right now. I'm recording in January.
Cool.
A full length. Yeah.
The song Survivor's Guilt really resonates with me because for me personally, and please tell me if this interpretation is wrong, it's that feeling when, for me, if you've left a relationship or a situation where you're happy, but you miss, you know you left maybe some destruction or pain in the past. But there's that, I love you, I hope you're okay, but I'm like, this had to happen. I don't know.
Right.
I love that song.
Thank you. I think there's a few angles in that song. It's pretty stream of consciousness. The way I wrote the lyrics happened in like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? You know those ones where you just, and I swear it was just, I was looking, my apartment looks out onto Oak Street. It's nice, this nice little street. And this dog was running down the block. Cause I just play my guitar standing by the window. And this dog was running away from its owner. And dogs don't know any better. They don't know why they're running away. They just know that they're running and they like doing that, you know?
Sure.
And, so this guy was like obviously freaked out because he was like going to lose his dog. And so that's the first line of that song is, you didn't mean to run away. You weren't using your heart. You weren't using your head. And it's just about this dog that was running away from its owner. And then I tied it into, like you said, a relationship, and also actual loss, you know. It was that record is like, I don't know what the hell. I don't think it was coincidence. Like, I don't know what it was about that record, but like as soon as I wrote it and recorded it and put it out, I lost a really good friend of mine suddenly. And we were, we're still completely devastated by it. But like, I wrote that record so that I could get through my friend's death that didn't even happen yet. It was really fucked up. Like when I went on tour and started playing those songs, I'm like, oh my God, how did I know that how did I know that I needed these songs? How did I know that I need to sing these songs to get over something that didn't even happen yet, you know?
Those songs were gifts that helped you with the tragedy.
Yeah, that happened like months later.
Wow, man.
Yeah, it was pretty tough.
Have you written after the fact about those feelings and losing a friend? Like,
yeah, I wrote one song on the new Movielife record that I kind of regret putting on the new Movielife record because it's like, I think it would have been more suited stripped down and personal, but it's in like this upbeat rock song. And we never play it live because I never want to. And I think that I would be able to, I think I might rework it and put it into a solo, at least a show setting. But there's a song on the new Movielife record called Blood Moon that is about, lyrically, I think anybody could get down and understand what I'm going through and what I'm talking about. But I think in hindsight, I should have saved it for my solo record, the lyrics.
Would you ever rework and re-release it as solo or?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
I don't, Rise Records is cool. They own the Movielife recordings for this last record. I'm sure if I explained to them why I wanted to re-release it, that they'd be cool with it. So maybe that's a good shout. Maybe if I rework that and kind of give it the more Vinnie solo kind of vibe and personality and kind of words are failing me right now. Sorry.
Treatment.
Yeah, just give it that right treatment and like that right really intimate kind of feeling because I'm sure my solo record's going to be depressing. In a good way. I love depressing songs. It helps me. It helps me feel stuff and it helps me feel okay about life's sad. Life's fucking brutal, Life can be brutal. Life isn't always brutal, but
one of the happier songs I like is Two Runaways.
Yeah.
That's a great love song, man. That's you I mean, my point is like songwriting is to be able to do both emotions is like is the challenge. And for me, a lot of my stuff is funny and silly and pop culture, but when I can write something real or like about a friend or about love, I feel like tipping the scales is healthy,
Definitely. Yeah. And you don't want people to you'll get sick of yourself, your brooding self, and people will too, It's like Morrissey's the only guy that's never written a happy song that everyone, not that he is. I think that there's a lot of, I mean, Pedro the Lion songs are like his sad songs are the ones that really get me, and Jets to Brazil sad songs. But yeah, you need a balance. Two Runaway. I mean, that was like my introduction to love songs, period.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote one love song on Avalanche United. That's like super love song. And that's called Is This Really Happening? And then there's one more love song. I'm sparing with the love songs, but I like to achieve a good love song. Sometimes a love song could totally not hit the listener and be like, that's dumb. But if you execute it the right way, so I appreciate you saying that because I think that's a cool song too. And I really like that song. I was playing it today on guitar because
whoa, that's weird.
I have some solo shows like in a month or so that I woke up early this morning. It's raining. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna play guitar. So I started like playing all these songs that I might just dust off. If I can play 30 different songs on this tour because I have the choice, like I should do that. And I should, if someone calls something out that I totally wouldn't have been prepared for. That's kind of my new thing. I'm going to tour a lot next year solo because I'm going to release a solo record next year. And I want to have all the new songs, all the solo songs, and a lot of Avalanche and Movielife songs to just pull them out and not be the guy that goes, I don't know that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to and it's cool. I have time. When I get home from a 6-week tour, I'm chilling at home. So I should use that time to sing more, play more, and just know more of my catalog so that people are happy and know that I'll give them what they want when I come to see them play.
Where can fans stay up on future dates? Like what's a good place to direct people?
I think the best place is just my personal Instagram account.
Cool.
Which is just Vinnie Caruana, VINNIE CARUANA, on Instagram. All my stuff. Here's some tour dates. Here's what I'm up to. Here's what I had for breakfast at in a Cracker Barrel in Tennessee or something. You know what I mean? But just kind of keeping people up to date with what I'm up to, and I do lots of different things. There's a lot of projects, so I just like to let them know what I'm doing and when that's keep everybody involved in my world.
It's cool that you have one platform you use. That's that's smart, man.
Twitter. I get a lot of soccer news from.
Right.
But I haven't posted much on Twitter in the last while. I think Instagram is just cool. Hey, everyone have a good day. Let's not write hurtful things at each other all day long on Twitter. Instagram, I feel like is more like, hey, This is what I'm up to if you care. If you don't care, you could unfollow me. But this is what I'm up to. I'm over here, and look, that's the view. Isn't that a nice view? Like, I just think Instagram is like, Instagram doesn't give me bad dreams. You know what I mean? If I'm reading Twitter before I go to bed, it's like so much negativity and stuff, and you know, like, especially with just the way shit is with like Trump administration and how embarrassed we all are to be American people. I mean, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but embarrassed that my fellow countrymen felt that it was a good idea to elect that dude.
Yeah.
You know, and all the fallout, you know, this is worse than and it's only going to get more fucked up, but he's actually playing the part of like the villain in the movie, like the bad guy in the movie. He's such a piece of shit, and all his people are pieces of shit. And I'll say this, I'm not mad at people for voting for Trump, because certain people were like, he'll shake things up, right? Mm-hmm. I'm mad at people if they're still behind him now with what they know. I'm mad if you're actually that much of a fucking asshole where you're still standing behind him now that you know what you know and everything that's happening. Humanity is not happening. And I'm mad at the people, there's people in my family that voted for Trump that stand by their decision. In my extended family, I should make that clear. And I'm mad at them for one, sticking by it, and two, maybe knowing that this is fucked up, but just not wanting to be wrong. So they just stick by it. If I would have never voted for the guy. I mean, I grew up here in New York. He's just a fucking loudmouth loser. Who's tanked every business and defrauded so many people. He's like this millionaire just because the money doesn't run out, you know? He's not this self-made working, you know, every man's man. I don't know how the fuck he convinced the middle of America to relate to him, the guy that lives in a gilded penthouse in New York City. They're not supposed to be down with that. They connected through racism, plain and simple.
And if sexism, fear of a woman in charge.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. God, you guys want a lady? Like, this is, you know, what is this? I thought this was America, you know.
And that's like you said, Instagram, it's harder to, you can regram, but you can't retweet in the same way where people can spread hate and division and sadness and, you know, pain. And that's a good point, man. It's like that's the thing, arts agency now. It's like your truth and your beautiful perspective is more important than, oh, haha, I identify with this brand. You know, I identify with such and such.
Exactly, yeah. And like, I think Instagram, people get like a bad rap. Oh, people on Instagram always showing their happy lives. They're not showing all the nonsense. It's like, yeah, that's just me in real life too. If I see you at the bar, so what's up?
Yeah.
I'm not going to unload all this negativity or like, listen, there's a time and a place to be like, to sit down with a good friends over a pint and talk about some serious shit that's going on. But if you're out on a weeknight going to have a drink in a bar, it's because you're unwinding a little bit from your day. And so I just think that's life, you know, to be like, oh yeah, because on my Instagram, it's straight positivity. Because that's what I want to put out there into the world. And I'm doing that, you know, tonight, if I go out for a drink, I'm not going to talk about all the shit that's bothering me in the world or how something's fucked up in my life. I'm just going to talk, like, just blow some steam off and hang out. And you know what I mean? So fuck yeah. Instagram's awesome. Twitter, I've tried to quit so many times.
Yeah.
Or I think I might still just like erase it and then like start a new one where I just follow like soccer news.
Anonymously.
Because I do get a lot of like, there's a lot of sources of like local people that like live in Liverpool and stuff like that where I get really good info and info that I'm not going to get through like, you know, American news outlets or anything.
You are the first guest I've had who is verified on Instagram. So
yeah, I don't know if I got warned that I'm going to lose that or something.
What?
I got warned. Like somebody was like, "You need to send your phone and email," and I was like, "I think this is a scam."
They want to hack you, probably.
Yeah, and I'm
Maybe.
like,
That's weird.
I don't give a fuck if I have a fucking blue check mark next to my name. I'm still gonna, just, does it make it any less valid? What you're saying, I don't know how that just appeared one day too.
Maybe someone had like an imposter account and Instagram was like, this is the real guy. I don't know. Something like that. That's what happened to me on Twitter, but I'm still trying to figure out on Instagram. Maybe I need to make a fake MC Lars.
The thing just appeared one day. I didn't notice. And someone goes, "Oh, I think my wife actually was like, oh, you're famous." I'm like, well, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "There's a blue check next to your name." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know how that happened." So yeah.
Vinny, I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for great insight and like all your knowledge. And it's cool to talk to someone who's had so many different projects but still who loves the music and still doing it. Like that's inspiring.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. I'll be 39 next week.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. And I enjoy it still. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's hard to make a living doing it. Sometimes you're like, holy shit, this is the best job ever. But I'm not ready to stop writing music full time. I need it to be happy. And just the writing and recording fulfills me. And then traveling also fulfills me. I love traveling and I love playing shows. So I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm sure there'll be a time when I'm like sick of doing it and I'll do it less, but I'm trying to do it a lot more until I do it less.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you always be able to do reunions of all your different projects.
Yeah. I'll always have stuff to do. I just recorded a 7-inch with Sammy Siegler from like Youth of Today, Judge, plays drums in Shelter, plays drums in Gorilla Biscuits.
Wow.
We recorded a thing that I don't know. We're going to be coming out with a 7-inch. We're trying to find a label for it, and then solo record, and a new pieced out record is finished too. There's a lot of shit. There's a lot of shit that's going to come out before I'm 40. Another solo full length, a pieced out full length, a 7-inch with a yet to be named hardcore project with Sammy. And like solo touring and Movielife touring, all before him. I got one more year till I'm 40.
Is there something we could like end with that we could play on the podcast?
Let's do. It's a solo song that became a Movielife song. It's called "Pour Two Glasses." It's like the ballad on the new Movielife record. I like singing this song. I was practicing it today too. So "Pour Two Glasses" from the newest Movielife record. Movielife record's called "Cities in Search of a Heart," and this is "Pour Two Glasses," which is another song that I wrote in like 10 minutes. It all just came out while my wife was in the shower. So when she came out, I was like, "I have a song." She's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I wrote an entire song while you were in the shower, and it's good, and I'm gonna put it on the record." So yeah, thanks for having me, dude. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Vinny. Here it is, and check out his new stuff. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, dude.
So down yesterday, you were never one for winter, relentlessly great. So pour 2 glasses, leave the light in the driveway on. I need to feel your trembling lips on my neck. I'll never leave you alone again to stare at this dreadful world in its cold dark eyes again. Life can be such a ruse. I'm not coming home for Christmas, I'm coming home for you. Stack your troubles on my shoulders, and take a deep breath. Don't choke on your freedom, those cold, lonely mornings. They aren't yours anymore. I think I could already see the fire in your eyes. I'll never leave you alone again to stare this dreadful world. And it's cold, dark eyes again. Life can be such a road. I'm not coming home for Christmas, I'm coming home for you. I'm coming home for you. I'm coming home for you.
Movielife, Pour Two Glasses. Be sure to check it out. You can find that song online. Support them. Support Vinnie. Really, really great guy. Follow him on Instagram. He has a lot of really cool photos. He's a great photographer, great musician, prolific guy, interesting guy. And yeah, it was great to sit down and talk with him. This has been the MC Lars podcast. Next week, we talk to Louis Logic. Louis Logic used to be in a group called the Demigods. I met him at South by Southwest a few years ago. Adam Warrock kind of got me into him. And he was friends with Mega Ran. He used to rap for a while and tour. And we talk about his sobriety and his marriage and being a father and the real estate hustle in New York. And it's just a really great interview. Very long, in-depth interview with an interesting, talented guy. So check out my interview with Louis Logic next week. Be sure to check out patreon.com/MCLars for those Infinite Jest raps. And until then, have a great week. Bye, everyone. Thanks again.